Good evening. This is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for November 24th, 2014. Before we get started, if everybody could check their electronic devices, make sure they're either turned off or turned down, please. And if anyone plans on addressing the board, if you could please sign in at the podium with your name and address. First order of business is under continuances. This is ZB 2014-36. The petition's a special permit. The applicant is Nicholas Fotopoulos. The property is located at 1600 Middlesex Street, and the petition, the applicant is seeking special permit approval for a development located at 1600 Middlesex Street. The proposal consists of reactivating an automotive sales operation on site. The proposed project is located in the regional retail zoning district and requires special permit approval under section 12.6B of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Good evening, Mr. Geary. So the last time you were here, we kind of walked through different things going on with the site. And so could you update us at this point, please?
Yes, just for the record, Attorney Stephen Geary for Mr. Fotopoulos, who is the petitioner for 1600 Middlesex Street. As you said, it's a petition to reactivate his use as a used car lot. We had this meeting about 6 weeks ago, and there was a lot of input from the board as to what their concerns were with this petition and what their concerns were for Mr. Fotopoulos' business. But there have been some developments since then, and I wanted to, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, if I could hand out just a memorandum that I wrote up to try to sum up what's going on.
Sure. Thank you.
And pretty much what this memorandum says, it just outlines what's happened. When we left that meeting, Mr. Fotopoulos and I had a long, in-depth conversations and meetings about the best way to handle this project. We understand your concerns. You had very legitimate concerns. So since then, Mr. Fotopoulos has cleared out the entire back parcel of the lot that abuts the neighbor who had did not oppose this project last time, but had some concerns about some vehicles that he described as junk vehicles, and you know, I couldn't argue with him that that's what they looked like. Mr. Fotopoulos thinks that those vehicles have value from what he can do to them, but nevertheless, he's agreed to remove those, and he has. So we met this morning at 11 o'clock, Mr. Fotopoulos, myself, Eric Slago from the City of Lowell, and as well as Joe Ginowitz, who's here. And they saw the condition of the property, but he removed at least 12 vehicles. The whole back is completely removed. He cut down numerous trees and all the growth that was coming up through the parking lot near the fence and cleared it out entirely. So the whole back parcel is completely clear. And he pulled all the cars off that were facing Samuel Street that were even abutting by, I think they were over maybe by a foot. And he pulled all those back, so they're all entirely on Mr. Fotopoulos' property at this point. As I said, he's removed a lot of the trees that not only in the back part, but also near his building. And he had a landscaper come in and gather all the brush and debris. And I believe the landscaper was finishing today, but if not, he will be finished sometime by the end of this week. So there's been significant improvements and effort put into showing this board that Mr. Fotopoulos, in good faith, wants to resume and reactivate this business as a used car lot, which it's been for, you know, through the history. I think Peter Halsey at one point started his car place there, you know, 60 or 70 years ago, or somebody in that family, and it's been a used car lot since that time. And, you know, as you know, around that area, that's extremely condensed with used car lots or something similar to that, which is entirely consistent with this city's master plan. So I think that Mr. Fotopoulos' request to use this property as it's set down to use as a used car lot is a reasonable request, so long as he has made the effort to show you that he is going to resume this business and do it in compliance with any kinds of conditions that this board imposes, and I've suggested a few. We talked at the meeting this morning about, possible issues that, I guess would be something that the city has concerns with, and maybe the neighbors have concerns with, and maybe generally anybody around there has concerns with. For instance, if you approve this board, what if he doesn't do anything? I think that was, I think Mr. McCarthy said that last time. How do we know? And that was a good question, and it's a legitimate concern. So as a condition that Mr. Fotopoulos would be willing to accept, if this board approves this as requested, then he would have, I would suggest 30 days from the 20-day, after the expiration of the 20-day appeal period, to apply for his license. And that's the license through the city of Lowell. And then if and when he's issued that license from the city of Lowell, if he gets it, then he has 14 days thereafter to actually begin the reactivating the business and working there and having it, move cars in and out like his intention is. Those time frames are my suggested time frames. I think that they're reasonable, and it would also be a condition. I didn't put it in there, but I thought of it after because I think Mr. Peglia brought it up about, the plan doesn't say where customer parking is. In reality, Samuel Street nobody goes up and down there, and historically, customers have parked there and walked in because it's easier for them to do that. But, and I think at the license stage, Mr. Fotopoulos will have to show a plan that shows where customer parking is and where a pass-through is for cars to get in and out of the place, which he would. So there's only, I believe there's less than 30 cars there now, but it's pretty much reorganized, and it looks substantially better than the last time we were before this board. I got involved in this case right before the meeting, and so I wasn't really up to speed with the history of the continuances and things like that. Those continuances, for the most part, were out of Mr. Fotopoulos' control. There was some personal things that he had to deal with that prevented him from coming to those meetings, and he had every intention to do it. It was not a situation where he was just putting it off. He called me months before then, but he couldn't even call me back, or I would have been here representing him at that time. But he did get me right before the meeting, and I didn't have a chance to do what I would normally do, which would be sit down with the city and try to figure out what the issues are and try to resolve those issues prior to the meeting. So we had the meeting, and we spent a substantial amount of time with the board, and you patient enough to deal with all the issues that we had here and all your concerns. So it was at that point that we left the meeting and addressed those concerns as best we could. And Mr. Fotopoulos is open to moving the time frames around, but I think the suggested conditions are reasonable, and I think that he's entitled to a petition. I mean, he's entitled to a special permit to use that business as it is in that area. It meets all the criteria, and I know that the concern was, his history in not activating it for several years. So we're here to say that that won't be the case anymore, and he's already taken some substantial steps to see to that, and he's expended a significant amount of money to get to that point, and he's willing to continue to do that. So I'd be happy to answer any question, but I would respectfully request this board consider granting that special permit with the conditions that I recommended and any of the others that you may have.
Okay, well, I appreciate the memorandum that was submitted. Joe, do you have any comments in relationship to the visit today, that whether you have some or not, that I'll leave it up to you.
Not really, Mr. Chairman. As Attorney Geary had mentioned, the back portion of the property, basically right from directly behind the building to the property line, had been cleared of vehicles and trees that were on the property. At this point, I believe Mr. Fotopoulos had mentioned there were 26 vehicles on the property, and that previously, when a license was active on the property, that he was licensed for 30 vehicles at that time. So that was about it that came out of the meeting. It was noted that at some point down the line, the property will need to be repaved, just because there are a lot of cracks in the pavement over there. There's a number of grooves over there. Whenever that occurs, the applicant should be aware that they will have to meet current stormwater standards. So that would be something they would they would have to work with the city engineer to accomplish, to meet whatever the stormwater regulations are at that time.
Okay, thank you. So, Joe, you said there were 26 vehicles currently on site. When they were in operation, they had
A
30?
license to sell up to 30
So
vehicles.
does the license, I know we're not the license commission, but I expressed my things about the license commission and us and this whole thing. Do they determine how many cars can be on site for a business?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
There have been instances where this board has offered their own limitation as to the number of vehicles on there, and the license commission has upheld that. But generally speaking, if this board doesn't take any action on a limitation on number of cars, they will do it themselves.
So if there's 26 today, does that mean there were approximately 38 or 40, Attorney Gary, before things started moving along?
Right, but I'm not sure that he was activating it, using it with 30 ever. I think that that's where he was putting cars that he came,
Sure.
we couldn't
Yeah.
sell it, but he was just storing them there. So I think the last meeting, there were 40 cars there, and so maybe there's 14 that are missing now.
Sure.
That he removed from
Yeah,
the property.
I just wanted to lay it
Yeah.
out that there were, we all know there were more than probably should have been on that
Right,
lot.
absolutely. And it makes, there's so much room in the back, you could take all the cars that are in the strip that we would need for like a passageway and put them in one area in the back and still have a lot of room. So I think 30 cars, there'd still be quite a bit of room there. So I think, if it was 30 before, I haven't discussed this with my client, but I think if there were 30 before, it's reasonable to have 30 now because
Yep.
there's a significant amount of room to walk around and do whatever you need to do, even have customer parking with 30 cars. It leaves a lot of pavement space available still.
And are we still talking about doing some type of repair work still going forward?
Yes, so he's finishing the landscaping. They cut down all the trees. You can see, if you go by, you can see I think they're 2-foot roots there, not roots, they're 2-foot stubs. And they're gonna take those out. They're gonna finish cleaning it up. Everything was bagged, but the bags are gonna be removed and then just the final cleanup. And it looked very good today. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it today because he was waiting for those people to come and do that, and that was done. And once you take the trees out, I think the neighbor had a concern about the overgrowth and everything and the cars that he was looking at. But once you take those trees out, it really does significantly open up that back part, and you realize what a large lot that is.
Yeah. So maybe I didn't ask the question correctly, but the last time we met, we were talking about there were going to be sales, and then there may be some repair work done on site. Does he still plan on doing repair work at
Well,
that
he would only
facility?
be able to do what he's licensed to do, so I think it's a used car lot. At some point, he may consider doing some auto body work, but I think if he did, he'd still have to come before this board for a similar special permit. I'm not sure, Joe might be able to address that better than I can.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. We treat auto sales and auto repair differently, and each one requires a special permit in this
Yeah,
district.
I know there's
Yeah.
some stuff you got to do if you're going to sell a
Right,
car.
and if
but-
he did that, if he used it, like a lot of cars, places around, they have a couple of bays, and they sell cars and fix cars and sell cars, and that's his business anyway, auto body repair. He can make a car that looks like a junk car, a very nice-looking car in a matter of just a couple of days. So his intention at some point would be to take that building and revise it or remove it and put up bays, but he couldn't do that without coming before this board. And I think if he does that, that's his time when he would have to repave the properties, probably stripe it, get it all organized, and, but I think what the plan is try to get this place activated, get some sales moving, and get some income generated, and then make his next step if this board were to approve something like that, which I think would only be an improvement to that premises. But he's just, at this point, it's just not, it's not feasible right now. He's got to take the first step first.
Okay. Anything else you want to address with the board?
I think that's it. Just to note that there was no opposition to this last time. I think the gentleman is here that spoke last time, and he at least my memory is he made it clear that he wasn't opposing it. He just didn't want to look at what he described as junk cars, and that was reasonable for him to say that. There is a fence there. The fence is entirely intact, and all that overgrowth was removed. And if that is him, he may want to address that himself as well.
Okay. I'm going to reopen it up to the
Sure.
public to see if there's anyone here.
Thank you.
Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone here like to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition. Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, or Mr. Gary, through you to your client. What you said in the memo that you just handed to us was exactly what I was going to say when it was my turn to speak, and that it suddenly appears as though there's a good faith effort being made to do something about the site. I went there today on my lunch hour from a little bit after noon till about 12:30. And so I think that considering the fact that we received this petition initially, I think in late summer probably, to see that something, and that you've met with the planning office to get something going there, or Mr. Fotopoulos has gotten something going there, I think is a good faith effort. I do have a couple of comments about both your memo and also the conditions when I went out there today. So I was happy to hear you say I would like to see the stumps removed, because although the site looks much better than it did a few weeks ago, now you have a half dozen 2-foot-high stumps on the property. The bags of debris were still there, probably 10 or 12 bags of debris. And still in the back part of the lot, along the U-Haul side of the property, there appeared to be a lot of overgrowth there still. And I don't know if that just still needed to be collected by the landscaper. But so based on the memo that you provided, there is a plan in place to get that done if it wasn't completed later this afternoon after I left the site, or in the next couple.
I believe the landscapers were supposed to be there this morning, and it was raining when we were there at 11, so maybe they didn't, but the plan is definitely this week. And I think they can't rip the stumps out, because then they'll rip out the pavement, so they'll probably just cut those right down to level ground, and then deal with it, however they deal with that. But that is the plan. To get all those bags, everything's bagged and ready to go. I saw what you said on the side of U-Haul, and if we're talking about the same thing, I do think that their plan is to get rid of that as well. But I think there's a boundary situation there, so I don't think they can go over to the U-Haul part. It's very close, so maybe that's part of that is U-Haul. I'm really not sure about that, but they are going to finish, and I can only assume that it's going to look better when they finish than it does now, because it looks okay now, but you're right, there's still some things that have to be removed, and especially those bags before it gets windy. And yeah.
And unfortunately, now that all the cars and the debris has been removed from the back lot, and I imagine that other members of the board, if they've been out to the site, are going to mention this too. And Joe mentioned that the pavement, now that the cars and the debris are gone from the back, that back lot looks bad. It looks like there's even a small sinkhole maybe forming sort of in the middle of the lot, where the hot top is very uneven and cracked. So as Joe mentioned, I think if you could just mention that again, Joe, about whether or not that would have to be repaved and the new stormwater regulations would have to be adhered to.
Yeah, whenever the lot is repaved, it's going to have to meet the state stormwater regulations. So whenever that repaving takes place on the lot, it'll have to be reviewed by the city engineering office to make sure it's going to comply with those.
So, I mean, as other members of the board speak, I don't know if people are interested in conditioning the repaving at some point, but that's something I think we need to consider. And the other thing, two other things I wanted to mention, I had mentioned it the last time the petitioner was here. I do not want to see the front sidewalk used as a way for cars to be backed on and off and on the lot. I know that you mentioned the last time you were here that certainly the condition of the sidewalk along a long stretch of Middlesex Street on that side is pretty bad. But that being said, it seems apparent to me, without being an engineer, that it seems like the front of the property and the city sidewalk was being used as an access for cars being moved on and off the lot. Now that the back lot is empty, it would probably be easier to move cars to the back lot while they're being shifted around in the front lot.
Right, and I think that's a reasonable condition to say that, you know, cars will not be driven over the front sidewalk. I mean, I have no information that it did or did not happen. I don't, I mean.
Oh, and I don't mean to.
I'm sure different times people did that, but the, you know, the sidewalks in that whole area is in disrepair, and the lot in the back, as you said, you know, it definitely needs work. He's in a situation where he's got to get it going before he can do that, you know, so it's a substantial undertaking to repave that rock, because like Joe said, you have to meet the stormwater requirements. It would require a plan. The plan will have to be approved by the engineer, and then it's a significant expense to do that, and where he's unsure as exactly what the end product's going to be there at that, whether it's going to be an auto body place at some point. He'd like to have a business plan when he comes up with that. There's just not enough time to do that at this point.
The last thing I wanted to mention, it seemed to me, and I didn't go on the property this afternoon, I just looked at it from the street, but there are still a couple of cars on the U-Haul side. There was one car that it's hard to tell what the actual color of the paint is. It's covered in sort of black soot or dirt, which would seem like one of the cars that could be removed because it doesn't appear to be in a saleable condition, and it's right where the 10 or 12 bags of debris were piled. So,
And that's the
I don't know
first-
if that's still in the removal of cars is still in process, but that car, again, now that all the other cars are removed from the back lot and the sumac bushes and the trees are cut down, when you're in that back side of the property, the first car you see, again, like I said, I couldn't actually tell what the real paint color was to that car. It was just black.
The first thing I said to him when I showed up there, and what he showed me, is that all on the hood, all that is the whatever residue that comes from the trees over the time. He said that gets power washed. He puts it. The door was banged in. If you saw the passenger side door, you replace that door. This is what he does for work. That car only has 30,000 miles on it, believe it or not. So he says that's a car that will sell right away, right when he gets that fixed. And to me, that's the first thing I said. Why isn't this car gone? And then he showed it to me. He showed me I saw the inside, and I said, all right, I guess from, you know, an auto body person's point of view, that makes sense. But, you know, I understand what you're saying, because I had the same concern. But that is a saleable car. It's a fixable car. But it's obviously not going to be fixed on that lot, so he will have to remove it to his auto body place to fix it, and then, you know, if he's going to sell it, he brings it back. So, you know, I agree, it does not look good at this point.
Okay, I don't have any other questions or comments. I think bottom line, I at least for myself say that there has finally been some good faith effort made to make some improvements to the site, as opposed to just coming here and asking for, you know, the reissuance of a special permit after some almost 3 odd years of it lying dormant. So that's all right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Van?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the applicant. Thank you for this memorandum. I think it gives us, or gives me a good picture of what's been done. You know, I didn't have a chance to go and look at all the updates you've done to the property today, but, you know, hearing comments from Mr. Paglia, you know, I think a lot of work has been done, and it's a step in the right direction. You know, I'm also very pleased to see that, you know, you're in compliance with the original license of keeping cars under 30. You know, but I do agree with Mr. Genowitz's comments from earlier. You know, I would support a condition just to either repave or redo the pavement, so, you know, so there's no cracks and tears and holes on the property, so it looks, you know, it meets all regulations with stormwater guidelines. But overall, you know, I think this is looking to be way better than it went when we first, you know, talked about the petition. So overall, I think it's a step in the right direction, and thank you for working so patiently with the board and with the city. So
Thank you for being patient with us.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Thank you, Van. Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of questions, but before I start, I just want to say that it's great to see the business coming back, I think. I think we can actually feel that the potential is there for it to actually be back in business. And I think that's the goal, that we want to see healthy, thriving businesses lining the streets of Lowell, especially in that area. So I'm glad to see that this potential is being realized again. The license expired in January 1st in 2010. This is November 24th. So it's nearly 5 years that the conditions have been without being able to sell a vehicle out of that. So there was a special permit granted and a license given, and nearly 5 years have gone by without vehicles being sold on that property. And in excess of what the license was given, 30 vehicles, and it says no junk vehicles or parts. So it's in violation of the license up until recently. So it really troubles me that that took so long. And so I think we should have a clear understanding going forward what we need to have happen. And I think there should be a number of conditions attached to this approval if there was one granted tonight. First one I want to talk about is the rear lot. So the rear lot doesn't seem to meet standards for a sales lot where vehicles would be parked for a extended period of time preparing for sale, since it doesn't have a continuous surface that would contain any oils or gas that could possibly leak out of a vehicle that contains oil and gas. So I would like to see the rear lot repaired before vehicles are stored there for sale. And I think that should be a condition, in my opinion, if one were to be looking for conditions tonight, that we repair the rear lot prior to any vehicles being allowed to be placed on it for preparation for sale. If that makes sense.
I think it's a reasonable request. I mean, it is in disrepair. I think it's a financial thing at this point, but I think that if he can utilize the front part of the lot and use the back part as maybe temporarily as customer parking and his own parking, and use the front to do that, that might make a little more sense.
I could see vehicles being parked there for a short period of time for customer parking or as daily, that kind of thing maybe is not as big a deal, but vehicles that are parked there for a week or two or a month,
Right.
that potentially are not brand new and potentially could be leaking into the ground. I think that we have to maintain a sealed surface there that protects the neighboring properties from any material that could seep into the groundwater and contaminate. So I think that would be the first one that I'd like to see. I'd like to have a clear understanding of what defines, according to the license that was granted, a vehicle for sale. So I also was out there over the weekend and noticed the vehicle with the discoloration. I think it's a nice Cadillac, and I think there's a couple of them, but you're right, it's just probably residue, but there's some flat tires in a couple of them. There's a red BMW without a rear window in it. And I'm just looking at these vehicles, I'm saying, okay, let's say running order. And these vehicles have to be maintained in running condition, available to receive or pass a state inspection. I think that would, in my mind, equate a vehicle for sale. And I think that even though you might be able to sell these vehicles, they seem like they'd be saleable to a junkyard more than it'd be saleable to a person that would take it down the street and get an inspection sticker. So I'd like to have a clarification that these vehicles that are on the lot are in running condition and are available to pass a state building inspection.
State vehicle inspection?
Vehicle, thank you. Does that make sense?
It does, because if somebody's going to come in and test drive a car, if they can't test drive it, what are they going to buy if it's not just salvage?
I
So
agree, I
that's-
agree. I think I'd just like to have that clarification, because I'm looking at some of these vehicles on the lot, and you can't drive them, they have flat tires, It's like, so anyway.
Well, and just to clarify something on my client's behalf, I've been advising him not to do anything to the cars except move them, around or get rid of them, because I don't know if he's in violation of anything doing that about the tires and the windows or anything like that. So maybe I'm somewhat to blame for that, because I said, don't do anything until we get through the meeting. So a condition would be, they have to have all their windows and they have to have all their tires, and that's a reasonable condition. As far as a condition that it pass Massachusetts vehicle inspection. I don't know, I mean, that would, only way to find that out, I think, would be to do it and get an inspection sticker, which you don't do with cars that, that you're selling, I don't believe. So there would I'm trying to think about how that would be enforced. How that condition would, to be reasonable, a condition has to be enforceable. So,
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm looking at a condition that's been there for a period of years where we have cars that are not close to passing us, that aren't close to saleable.
Right.
And I think if you want to have a vehicle that's saleable, it has to be something that the person can use. And if the person can't get a state inspection sticker, he can't use it, or he shouldn't be using it.
and I agree. My question is, just to clarify, is how, if that were a condition on there, how is that enforced? Like, how do you know, how does he know who, isn't that more a licensing issue, or?
I don't know. I think we've gone so far beyond that with this site that I think I just want to have some kind of assurance that we're going to have a viable sales opportunity here, that there's going to be a vibrant contribution to the community.
What about all vehicles on the lot shall be in saleable, drivable, and in saleable condition to be stored on the lot? In other words, I mean, I think by adding the language, just my feeling is by adding the language that, pass a mass inspection that could be hard to determine. So
How do you drive it if you can't pass the inspection?
you don't. So I'm saying that's why. But how do we? If it says it has to pass an inspection, who goes and inspects them? Is my question.
Legally drivable. How about legally drivable?
Legally
Does that
drivable
work
with
for
all
you?
windows and doors, I think makes sense.
Legally drivable. It doesn't have to say pass inspection. Legally drivable, I think, says the same thing. In my opinion, I could live with that.
Right, and I think that makes sense.
All right. Another condition I'd like to say is that the client will, under no circumstances, store vehicles on the lot that are not drivable. Because we have that condition. I think we might have that condition today, right? You suggested your client not do anything, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into a situation where we're storing vehicles that are not drivable on the lot.
I agree. That's not the purpose of the
It
business.
shouldn't be, right, okay. And then I think, just because this has been a situation that hasn't gone well for us for almost 5 years, I think we should have the ability to review after 6 months the conditions on the lot, and we should have a chance to just see if this is, I agree with the idea that we have a condition that no later than 30 days after the completion of the appeal period that the client applies for a license to receive the active sales for cars on the lot. I agree with that. But I think beyond that, we should look out that we review after 6 months.
Right, that would be, I think,
The
so
condition.
December, January, February, March, April, to the end of May, to be warm enough where the snow's all gone, and, so that makes sense as well.
Okay.
Would that be a review date for just the board, or would he, you want us all here? And normally, I think how we used to do it, you would just have a review date and with the board, and the applicant would only come if there was an issue. So I don't know procedurally, Joe, how you guys are doing that now.
It would be something that would be posted on the agenda. It would be at a regularly scheduled meeting, and I think it'd be beneficial to have the applicant here in order to discuss with the board what's been going on over the last 6 months, and that way the board can ask the applicant or a representative directly any questions, any follow-up questions that they have.
I think that makes sense to me.
Yep.
yeah.
Does.
Great. That's all I had.
Okay.
I would feel
No,
that
those
would
are
make
reasonable
me
conditions.
feel like we're doing a service to the community by making sure this is successful.
And I think that's his intention anyway, so
Yep.
those are all reasonable.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I as well am glad that the petitioner is here tonight without a continuance and moving forward and has attained an attorney to represent them. I just have a few questions, just as it relates to the stumps. You're just going to grind those to ground level, correct? Without
I think
disrupting
that's the
any more of
plan at this point, to just take them down to ground level so they're not and nobody's gonna trip over them, and they're not sticking out as an eyesore, so.
Anything other than that, you're gonna have more erosion issues, more default on the paving itself.
Right.
And I think it's just gonna create a lot of different issues as you move forward. Just wanna talk a little bit about that back parking lot. The sense I'm getting from the colleagues, we're just looking for not to be an inventory storage area. I think that the onus if it's not gonna be used as part of the business, to have it repaved as an intention seems to be a hardship to a degree. I mean, like the time that this property has been, as it has been a while, and it's obviously wearing. So I think that the condition, and I just want a clarification that it's a condition if it's to be used, correct? The back lot to be repaved if it was to be used in the future?
Yes.
But we're just not looking to have anything stored over a reasonable period, which would be 7 to 10 business days, or 7 to 10 days.
I don't think there should be cars overnight there, because it could leak oil and gas into the groundwater.
Any cars?
I don't think it should be stored overnight, yeah. Customers and users, but
Is it, through you, is there intention to have that as overnight storage for any of the cars on the lot?
Well, I think prior to tonight's meeting, he
Okay.
would have done that, but,
All right. I just wanted to be clear that,
right, there are, to have a passageway that we may not need if we're gonna leave the back empty. So I guess it's just gonna be how he configures that thing. So if we're gonna leave the back empty, he won't necessarily need that passageway in front, so his cars for customer parking and egress and people coming and going can park in the back for a few hours and leave, and I think that's what Mr. McCarthy was suggesting, that, people, it's all right to come and go, but nothing to stay there, overnight or anything longer, unless he decides that he's gonna pave it and meet the requirements, and then he could store them there. So that would be at his timetable and his, what he thinks is feasible there. But, I think it's, so long as he can keep all those cars in front and not have that, and not create another passageway in front that he wouldn't need, I think it makes sense. Still, we're gonna be able to fit, 28 to 30 cars on the lot with a huge amount of pavement for people to come and go. So I think either way, it makes sense. But I definitely understand the concern until that lot is repaired, and I don't know if he has to, if he just repairs it, I'm not sure that he has to meet any requirements further than just asphalt repair, Joe. I'm not positive of that, but, he could do, they do the cold patch, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but I know we've dealt with it before where, they can go in at a certain time of the year, like this time of the year normally where you wouldn't pave, and they can repair it to get through a year or two. And if he could do that and have it where nothing could leak into the ground, I think that would make sense. But I'm not sure he'd even do that because it would be a considerable expense, and he could still use the cars in front. So that might be just it might make more sense anyway to use the back as customer parking and people coming and going.
do you have any idea how many employees he's gonna have on site?
I think it's just going to be him. He might have one other worker. I asked him that before, and pretty much it's when he's there or somebody else. He has the other auto body shop, but a lot of times somebody would call and say, I'm interested in that, Cadillac with all the tree stuff on it. I'll meet you there tomorrow at 12, and he'd go. I think it's one of those things.
And I am glad to see that the city sidewalk, you're agreeable to that not being a parking or a passageway. I think that is just opening up for some type of injury error in the future. So as I look at the plan all in all, I did have some of the concerns being 5 years out. We had a couple continuances. We were definitely getting anxious as a board to move on with this. And I think some of the conditions that my fellow board members are requesting through you, I think they're attainable tonight. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney Geary, for providing us with the memorandum, and I appreciate your involvement in this matter. As you're well aware from the prior hearing, it's got a bit of a history on it with Mr. Fotopoulos requesting continuance after continuance on this matter. I do got to say, I was, last time at the last hearing, you were present with Mr. Fotopoulos, I asked you when his license lapsed, and not to your fault Mr. Fotopoulos told you 2 years ago, and came to find out it was lapsed since 2010, so it's been, like Dennis said, almost 5 years now. So that gave me quite a pause as to what we were really dealing with here. And but in reviewing your memo and your presentation today, I mean, I appreciate it. It seems like you're, with all, kind of lighting a fire under Mr. Fotopoulos and getting him to address this right away. And reviewing your proposed conditions, as long as, and they don't seem unreasonable, but I would like to share the sentiments with my fellow board members, is provide other conditions with regards to the amount of cars on the lot and the use of the back lot and whatnot. The one question I did have, this to Joe, actually. If you got the memo, do you have, does the planning board have any, or the planning department have any comments on Mr. Attorney Geary's proposed conditions with regards to the timing and whatnot, or is it?
Not exactly. I think the kind of time frame that's been presented is fairly reasonable, with the 30 days after the appeal period, and then the follow-up for action if a license is granted. And I think the choice by the board, if they do grant an approval, to have a 6-month administrative review to ensure those things are happening and that sales are taking place on the property, no other violations have come up on the property, and to get a sense at that point where essentially the project stands in terms of getting the lot repaved and dressed up. I think all of that would be reasonable.
Thank you, Joe. And I presume Attorney Geary is certainly going to be working with the planning department and the building inspectors as far as making sure that Mr. Fotopoulos is...
Right, I think the most guarantee of a layer of oversight that you have is going to be the licensure board, whoever issues that license. And as a condition, by the way, I think it would be also a reasonable condition to say no more than 30 cars. I mean, that's what he had before, and I think that makes sense to not increase that, not to stress that lot. But yeah, I think Sean, the conditions or the requirements to comply in order to get the license are probably going to be more strenuous than here, or mirror this and maybe add a few more. Maybe I should say. So I think the protections there, and certainly if there's an issue, the planning board will. I think the proper procedures, they do notify Mr. Fotopoulos in writing that there's an issue, or they notify the board and somebody would get in touch with him and he would get in touch with me if he desired to do that, and we'd go from there. But I think that, one of the most important recommendations is the 6-month review, because the question with this board is, well, how do we know? Look what's gone on for 4 years, and so 6 months, Mr. Fotopoulos can show you that he literally means business, so.
I agree. Thank you. I appreciate it, and I wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. All right, so I have quite a list of stuff here, but I have a couple of questions just to, I guess, wrap it up. So on the memorandum, Mr. Geary, on, I guess, letter A for the 7 business days. So is the date, if I can do a calendar, is the date going to be December 4th? Is that what we're talking about, 7 days? If we
Today, whatever that is.
move it? So does that sound correct? December 4th, Joe?
I think it would be the 2nd.
Well,
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Thursday's a holiday, and then you're talking business days, right?
Yeah, business days.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 4th.
Okay. Well, I want that noted as December 4th, just to be, I like to be picky. So B and C, I know Sean kind of asked about this to Joe, about the city. So Joe, is the city going to basically monitor B and C? That the days that have been outlined here. Okay.
Yeah, we'll
And
certainly work with the
just so I'm
license
clear, on B, now it says 30 days after the expiration, so are we saying the expiration of the appeal, is that 30 days and then another 30 on top? Is that?
I think the
talking-
appeal period, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was 20 days.
Yeah, it's 20 days from when the
Okay,
letter
so
is
it gonna
filed with the
be
clerk.
50 days that he has to, in other
Apply
words,
for
20's got to go by, right?
20 from the letter, so you're probably right with 30, closer to 2 months, yeah.
Well, I'm just want to make sure. So
Yep.
it's almost like 50 days, so, I just rough it out and say we'll be into, probably beginning of January is when he's actually has to apply by, correct?
Right, and he, just for the record, he's going to apply. If he can apply during the appeal period, he will. It's just that
Okay,
we're just
yep.
not sure of that. If he can get that going, he'll start that process next week.
Okay. Okay, and D, I don't, D's going to be handled by the License Commission, I guess. So let's see, some of the other things, that if a license operates, all right, C, we've already talked to, cars on site. So I guess, and this is where we talk about the License Commission again. I suppose they could actually, they may decrement the number of cars. We don't know what the License Commission will do.
That's correct.
I mean, 30 was what he had before, correct?
Correct, yeah. They could
And-
limit it to 20.
My assumption is going to be, it's going to be 30 or less. It's not going to be 30 or greater. I would assume
Right, I would,
they
yeah.
have their,
The square footage didn't
guidelines.
increase, yeah,
yep.
right.
And the other thing about the whole thing about the site, and that's where I have a lot of, I don't know, I don't agree with the process, but I would assume they're going to make their own assessment regarding the site also, as far as, are they ready to open the type of business that they want? I would assume there's some type of criteria the License Commission goes through for that, too.
Like I said, I think the hurdle at the License Commission's gonna, he has to do that, and they're gonna have unless I'm wrong, Joe, but my guess is that any license for whatever business that you're going to apply for would have more oversight and authority to figure out exactly what you're doing and enforcement of those,
Right.
requirements.
Well, I guess the case I'm making is, I think you got two different boards looking at one site, so
That's
once
good,
the final product is done,
right.
hopefully it's a good product. Okay, so let me keep moving here. So D, I have no problem with. So when we talk about paving, and I also know on the first comments from DPD, we were talking about striping. So let's discuss paving and forget about the striping right now. What paving are we doing? What type of paving are we talking about?
He didn't plan on doing any paving at this point.
Okay, that's what I heard. And then I started hearing about the rear of the site. So are we doing something to the rear or not, right, in regards to paving?
He has no plans to do that now, so I think one of the conditions that was discussed was that, and unless or until he does that, he cannot store cars on that section for sale. He can have cars, custom parking in his own car for there during the day, but it wouldn't be anything where he could store cars on that part
Okay, so we're going to say that,
unless it was repaved or repaired.
yeah, so we're saying there can be a use for the rear, but it's nothing to do with storing cars or putting cars for
Storing
sale.
cars for sale.
Yeah, okay. Because I think, we talked about customer parking the last time, and we talked about the side street and whatever, but I think what I'd like to see is at least one, if not two, at least customer parking spots. It doesn't have to be a lot. I think we kind of talked about the way the business is run, but, okay, so I just answered my own question. The stormwater, there was a comment about stormwater, if and when paving is done, so that would have to be followed also. I want that as a condition, as well as the paving, when the paving,
As a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, it may be something that if he repaves any portion of the lot that he comply with the requirements of repaving in the city, and I think to do that requires the oversight with the plan, and then the engineer's office and the stormwater
right,
retention plan.
yep. Okay, and that's fine with me, you got that? Mike mentioned about, and you already said you don't have any basis of any knowledge of this, but no pulling in and out of over the sidewalk on Middlesex Street. Just want to have that in there.
Right.
I know you have no idea if he does it or doesn't, but let's put that in. Okay, so I can get So there's not going to be any repairing of the rear lot, correct?
Well, I think his goal overall is to repave the entire lot at some point. If he decides that there's a better or dual use to that property, then he would do that. He doesn't want to do it piecemeal because it wouldn't make sense business-wise or financially to do it like that. So once he gets up and running and he starts getting this business going, which I think you'll see, he's going to be pretty aggressive to do that. Once he starts, generating income there, he's going to put it back into the project. And, we may be back before this board looking for something else at some point. And hopefully, you'll be happy to look at that. You'll see some huge differences, and,
Okay.
you'll find that he's, a businessman that you can work with.
Okay, next one is, you and Dennis discussed this one, all vehicles shall be legally drivable. That's the terminology I heard. Next one, I don't know I think we talked about it, but no storage of vehicles be on site that are not for sale. Next conditions, we talked about so the 6-month, I'm going to call it administrative review, which is what we normally talk about. What I heard was, so after, we're going to do a 6-month review, but that'll be after, is it once he is up and running legally as a business with License Commission, that he'll come in here and give us a status update? Is that kind of what I heard?
It could be either that or from the approval date today, whichever the board would prefer.
Well, I think I'd rather have it after the license is awarded from the License Commission, then we'll start forward.
From the date of issuance of the license, if he's issued a license.
Is that
yes.
acceptable?
Yeah, I think that makes
Yep,
sense,
okay.
yep.
And then the last one I have is, forget about it, forget about the last one. All right, anybody else have a condition or a comment or a question? Does anybody want to know anything at all about the used car business?
I just want one clarification. Mike had mentioned the removal of the stumps, and so are we taking the stumps down any lower than what they currently are on the site, or are we leaving them as they currently stand, which is probably 3 or 4 feet above grade?
Can I just clarify this with my client for 1
Okay.
second?
Level to the pavement? Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to have them ground. Cut level to the pavement. That's right.
So yes, Mr. Chairman, they are going to cut those right down to level. That was the job he was hoping that they were finishing today, but, hopefully, he's kind of at their mercy, but I think we said that it be done within 7 business days as well, so that's to the 4th, and that gives them plenty of time. We are expecting a snowstorm, a little bit of a snowstorm on Wednesday. I don't, know what these guys are all plowing or what they do, but, his intention, he started that process, and they're there to finish it, so he's kind of at their mercy a little bit. So, maybe if the board would consider it to be reasonable, 2 weeks, I think after that, we're pretty much into the winter and the snow, so my guess is that gives them plenty of time to do it. And again, they were supposed to be there this morning, so, you might find out that it's done tomorrow.
One of the conditions was to remove all the brush in the bags by December 4th, so maybe the same thing as the brush bags and to cut stumps down level to pavement.
Right, if we could do it, the same people are doing it, so whenever that is,
December 4th?
I would say, we could keep December 4th, but I'm just saying that if for some reason we get this storm and he's delayed, he wants it done right away, and was expecting them today. So I think we keep it at December 4th, and, if something comes up, we can deal with it with maybe the planning department if there's a slight delay, but I don't anticipate that it will go beyond that at all, or I wouldn't have recommended that time frame.
Okay, any other conditions from any other board members, comments? Okay, well, as far as, the special permit, obviously, we've covered a lot of ground with this petition, and I appreciate the memorandum. I think it was a good dialogue we had. At least it shows, hopefully, a good faith effort on the petitioner. And as far as granting the special permit, if we look at the criteria, I believe this was a a small business that was there before, and, you know, there's obviously a need, and we'd like to see small businesses flourish in the city. So not every one of the criteria fall within this petitioner's application, but I believe he hopefully will meet these as we move forward. And if there's no other comments, I'd like to have a motion, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-036 for a special permit for 1600 Middlesex Street to develop a automobile sales operation on site, a reactivation of an automobile sales operation on site, with the following 10 conditions. First condition is that the owner complete the removal of excess brush and bags of leaves and the cutting of stumps level with pavement by December 4th, 2014. Second condition is that the owner apply for a license to operate a used car lot with the city licensing board within 30 days after the expiration of the appeal period, if this, to the expiration of the appeal period, yeah. Third, that if the license to operate a used car lot is issued by the city, the petitioner commence operation of a used car lot business within 14 days of having the license granted. 4, that the petitioner abide by the car limit imposed by the city licensing board, as well as any other requirements imposed by the licensing board. 5, that the real lot be used for customer and/or personnel use only until it is repaired. 6, that the applicant, 6, that the front sidewalk not be used for vehicular access to the lot. 7, that the vehicles on site be maintained in legally drivable condition. 8, that no storage on site, that there'll be no storage on site of vehicles that are not legally drivable. 9, that the rear lot be repaired or repaved before it is returned to use for vehicle storage, and be done so in accordance with the City of Lowell Engineering Department guidelines for repaving. And 10, that the applicant, that the application for special permit is subject to board review after 6 months of the granting of a license by the License Review Board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Palia?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Peck?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Perrin?
Approved with conditions.
Okay, Attorney Gary, been approved with conditions.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and I think you'll be surprised and pleasantly surprised and happy with the final outcome in about 6 months. So 6 months from approval, so I look forward to seeing you then. Joe, is it possible to, if you could email me those conditions, just so we have the same list? Great, and thank you. Good night.
You didn't memorize those?
I did some, wrote them down.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next order of business under new business is ZB 2014-61, petitions of special permit and variance. The applicant is Brian Tuch, and the applicant is seeking variance approval to construct an addition and deck without meeting rear yard setback requirements. The petitioner is seeking relief under section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Is the petitioner here? Hi, sir. If you could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Brian Dutch. I live at 65 Smith Street in Lowell.
Yep.
I had a deck done a couple months ago.
Yep.
First of all, I have my own deck. It built the same as a house, and I close it up as a, they call I use for that they like put shoe and coat and the coat stuff like that because it's too cold when the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I close the decks up, I have no deck, so I have to extend a little bit out. But it's too close to the fan.
Yep.
And when I did that, I did not know that I have to ask for the permit.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my friends told me that I said I have to come to the city and ask for the permit. But when I did that, and they said it's too close. So they have to tell me that I have to take it on or to come to appeal for the variant approval.
Mm-hmm.
So today I'm here. I'm hope I get approval.
Okay. So bottom line is, you put something up, you didn't realize you needed to get approval to do it, and then, so, I know when I went by your house, I actually drove up your driveway, right to the very end, made an observation, and then I also drove over to the church that's a little bit up from your house, just to see it from the parking lot. And it looked like, is the roof still unfinished?
Yes,
Yep, okay.
because when I got a note and I stopped doing anything, I just wait for the approval.
Yep, okay. So, do you understand now kind of what happened and
Yes.
maybe what you shouldn't have done? Okay.
Yes.
Were you doing the work yourself or somebody
Yeah, I
else?
do myself.
Yep, okay. I guess the only question I'm gonna ask is, when I drove to the end of your driveway, there's a white fence out back,
Yes.
and when you get to the end of your driveway, there's an opening.
Yes.
So what's the purpose of the opening?
Because that is the driveway is for people live behind me. The house is behind me, and they use the same driveway to access to the house.
Well, I noticed and Joe, maybe I'll ask you, I noticed on the plan, if I'm reading it right, it says there's a 20-foot easement where his driveway is. So, and I actually called Joe today and we discussed, I said how I came to the end of your driveway, and then I noticed it was open, and when I drove up there was one vehicle in back, and I was like, oh, that must be where they're parking their cars, but it didn't make sense to me. But anyways, so are we saying that with this easement, then people are actually driving in and out of there?
That'd be correct. An easement like that is usually to allow cars to be able to pass and repass over a particular property if they have trouble gaining access to a particular section of their lot, particularly with a car. Then a lot of times what you'll see is an access easement, and it's usually laid out in a deed on a property.
Well, and the other thing I had mentioned to Joe, your home and the home next door, those actually came before us on this board. And I honestly can't remember if they said something about easements and there's people driving in and out, but anyways. Because you have an awful long driveway just to get back to those two homes there, which I was well aware of. Okay, so the white fence is where approximately your lot line actually ends, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's one of the reasons why you're here tonight. So anything else you want to tell us before we continue?
I concerned about the driveway. I have a question that why that behind me, the house behind me is use the same driveway instead of they have to do their own way to drive into their house.
I don't know, but that's not why we're here tonight. I'm just asking because I talked to Joe about this. I was really confused when I drove the end of your driveway.
Yeah.
I see an opening and I'm like,
No, before they have the door closed and closed, but somebody knocked it down. Like they hit it and then they leave it open.
oh, okay. All right. Anything else you want to tell us about your deck?
I hope the city is approved that what I just stated.
Yep.
And if the city approve, I will continue to finish up.
Yep.
And thank you for very much.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor, in favor, hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone here like to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition, hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Open it up to the board. Mike?
Mr. Chairman, just in solidarity with you, I was also very confused when I went out to the site this weekend. Your home and the home next to yours have a Smith Street address, but it's really as if they're down the end of a driveway that may or may not be on Smith Street. And then you have the home behind you that is allowed this easement, and that home isn't on Smith Street at all. That's on I don't know what the name of the street is, but the next street over.
Yeah, Fernald Street.
Fernald, right. So the home on Fernald Street, it has that easement to get into their backyard, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. That sort of clarifies some of the confusion I had. All that being said, I actually don't have a concern. I mean, I understand this happens from time to time, that folks start work and just are not familiar with the rules around pulling a permit, and they're not there to be punitive, but I'm sure you wouldn't want someone building a deck within inches of your property line without at least getting permission ahead of time. So I would be concerned if the resident on Fernald Street was here tonight, and I would also assume that they would be notified that the petition was coming before us, and if they were in opposition to you extending your deck to build a storage room and then build a new deck on that they would be here tonight to speak against it. But I guess I don't really have any questions, just wanted clarification on the easement. And when I went out to the site, I didn't actually drive down the driveway. I stayed on the street and just walked around and looked at the area. Even though the fence is very close to your deck, it's, in my opinion, it's certainly nowhere near any other structures. The back side of the church, I mean, there's many yards of land there, and even the backyard of the home on Fernald Street, the house itself is very far away from where you built this new deck.
Yep.
And I know that's the main concern with this rule, is that it's could be for safety, public safety, that homes or structures are not literally on top of each other. So.
Okay.
So I guess that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't get a chance to go down Smith Street today, but I do understand the purpose of this project. I think it completely makes sense that he wants to close out his deck or extend the deck. We do live in New England, and, I've seen other petitioners before this enclose their deck. I think the issue here is that he started the work and he didn't know he had to pull permits, but, I think this is a learning lesson for the petitioner, that before you start any kind of construction, you should just check in. Like Mr. Paglia said, it's really a safety issue for the owners and for the whole neighborhood. But overall, I think you do meet the requirements for the special permit, and, I don't think this will be a bad project. I think it'd probably improve the home overall and even the neighborhood, that section in the Lowell Highlands. So, overall, I think this is a good petition, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Van. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I appreciate any homeowner that's doing upgrades to their property and wanting to make improvements, and it's great to see that happening in this neighborhood. And you have an odd lot. You have a very odd lot, so it's an odd, and the requirements for setbacks in this neighborhood, Joe, are, I don't know, they're surprising. Because I think most of the construction in this neighborhood doesn't fall within the requirements of the new setbacks.
Yeah, it would seem to be a lot denser and a lot smaller than what the current zoning would call for over there, yes.
Yeah. So there were comments by the planning department that we have. I don't know if you've seen the comments that the planning department generated. Did you receive a copy of, I think it's dated November, what is it dated? November 10th. One of the comments that's here is asking about the look of the deck. Do you have any elevations, or how high is it going to be above grade, do you know? With a,
I use the same height as the old deck.
what is that, about 4 feet above grade?
Well, I'm not sure. Like 2.5 feet, something like that.
2.5 feet, okay.
Yeah.
But will you have stairs? The
Yes,
plan
yes,
that we
have
have doesn't seem to have any stairs going from the deck.
Yes, have to stay. Yes.
And how will they be in the rear yard setback, or where will they be placed on the lot?
I replaced the deck. I mean the stair.
So it's not in the rear yard setback?
No.
Okay, good. Well, I think the old deck was built on, and I think I'd like to see a condition that this new deck, if we were to approve it, that we'd have a condition that under no circumstances would be available to support any future addition. Because I think that really starts to encroach on the neighbors when you see a structure that's part of the house. And a deck, I think, is, especially a deck that's that low, doesn't seem to have the impact that an addition would. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
How do you feel about that? I just don't want to see you
So
enclose
when
that.
I extended, I used the nut with the long screw with the nut, and I bolt two in one to each other, and then I tied on. So we connect together like two part and one long nail and with a nut.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying down the road, like 5 years from now, if you want to increase the size of your shed or your house, that you understand that we're not giving you approval to build on your deck. We're giving you only approval to build the deck, if we were to grant approval tonight.
Okay.
Okay?
So-
Well, I think you have a very understandable case here with the odd-shaped lot in particular, that you meet the requirements of a variance, so I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I as well agree that when homeowners want to upgrade their property, it's always concerning when we go about doing additions in buildings and the city inspectors and building inspectors are bringing it to homeowners' attention. I just think it's part of what we're seeing a lot of now. My only concern would be what Dennis echoed about any future buildings. And do you have any thought on any detailed plan here? Are you doing the work? Are you contracting it out outside of the plot plan? Are you hiring a contractor?
No, I do myself.
You're gonna do the whole
Yeah,
by yourself?
I do myself.
So you'll be meeting the requirements of the building department and having to spend some time with them. So I would suggest you set an appointment with Joe and building department and make sure all your ducks are in a row there, so.
Okay.
I know it's a very tight spot over there. I was concerned about the easement as well. I mean, it looks a little dangerous to me, but regardless, I wish you the best of luck.
Okay. Thank you.
So Sean, before I move to you, so Joe, based on what Gary just said, if we grant the variance and the special permit, is the building department going to go back out there and review the structure with this gentleman to make sure it meets all the codes?
Yes, they'll have to. The building department will have to go out there and ensure that it's going to meet building code.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sean. Next.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Actually stole my thunder. I was about to ask Joe the same exact thing.
I just wanted to look intelligent.
I do want to say I did have a chance to go by the property earlier, and yes, it is a very compact, small lot that you don't have much room to work with, but I do share the same sentiments of my fellow board members, and we appreciate when homeowners are trying to do the best that they can to improve their property and make it little. And I do think that one of the conditions would be that probably no further improvements would have to be done. I mean, you don't have much to work with to begin with right now, based on what you're doing, so I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, sir, so I guess based on each of the board members' review and input, obviously you went ahead and had something constructed, and now you've understand the rules and regulations, so I believe the board, in its review, have found that, you know, we're going to approve this, but we have a couple of conditions that will need to be adhered to in order for the finished product
Okay.
to meet our requirements. So the two that we have, one would have to do with any future, Dennis had mentioned this to you, make sure there's no more future additions to that same area.
Yep.
And then the second one would be the building department will be visiting you again to review the structure with you, just to ensure that you're meeting all the mass building codes
Okay.
regarding the material and the structure.
Okay.
Okay? And I think that's it. Any other comments from any of the board members, or? No? Okay, go ahead.
I just want to be clear with Joe.
Sure.
It says special permit and variances. This is a variance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, it's not a special permit then. At least I don't see it as a special permit.
Yeah, I mean, let me just review one thing for you, Mr. McCarthy. I believe you're correct. I'll just double check for you. Yes, you're correct. It's just a variance at this point. Right,
So we're
it's
just,
just a variance at this
just
point.
for the variance, okay, yep. Okay, could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-061 for a variance for 65 Smith Street to add the construction of a rear deck not meeting the rear yard setback requirements with the two following conditions. One, that the new deck not be available to support any future additions, future building additions. And two, that the construction of the new deck meet Mass State building code requirements.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
A roll call?
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Palio,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Peck,
Approve the conditions?
Mr. Perrin.
Approve with conditions.
Okay, Mr. Dutch, been approved with conditions. Wish
Thank
you the
you.
best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, our next order of business is ZB 2014-62, the petitions of special permit and variance. The applicant is McDonald's USA LLC. Property is located at 803 Rogers Street. And the petition, special permit for illuminated signs and a variance for wall signs pursuant to section 6.3.29 and section 6.3218D of the zoning ordinance. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. For the record, David Cloutier, Nobis Engineering, representing McDonald's. Just want to write my name down before I forget.
Hey, take your time. You've been patient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
This plan may look familiar. We did come before the board back in May for this very site for special permit and variances. Those were approved. However, one item which was inadvertently admitted were wall signs, both that are illuminated wall signs on the building, and so we hope to address those now and make sure that the entire project is covered. So again, we're only focusing on the wall signs today and not the remainder of the site. That said, just to bring you up to speed, do a quick run-through of the property. We are along Roger Street over to the right there, and there's also a public right-of-way, Lowell Research Center Access Drive, along the top of the plan. The orientation of the building is up against Roger Street, and you can see we have a drive-through lane which curls around and behind the building, so that the drive-through pickup lane is actually between the building and Roger Street. The parking lot is behind the building so that the primary pedestrian access and entrance to the building is actually from what would be the back side of the property. Of course, within this area, we are right next to the Hannaford, so there is a private access drive along the remaining two sides of the property that are for access to McDonald's and to Hannaford. So to move forward to show the building elevations, these first elevations are the sides of the building that are facing the public right-of-way. This long facing along the top is the drive-through elevation, which faces Roger Street. And there are two signs here, a McDonald's sign along the top and the Golden Arches logo down the side. Then moving over, this second elevation is the side of the building that is facing Lowell Research Center Access Drive, and there is just the single Arches logo there. If we move then to the other two building elevations, to the two sides that are not facing the public right-of-way, we have the main entrance here, which is facing towards the Hannaford Access Drive. Again, there's an illuminated McDonald's sign, there is the illuminated arch, and there's also a non-illuminated small welcome sign over the door. And then finally, on the fourth side of the building, which is facing towards the parking lots, towards the rear of the property, there is another small non-illuminated welcome sign, and finally one more arch. And so that is the alignment of the signs on the building. In terms of what specifically we are requesting tonight, are variances for the signs that are on these two sides of the building that are not facing the public right-of-way. These two small welcome signs are non-illuminated, and they are small. They're less than 3 square feet, so they are allowed by right. However, the two Arches signs and the McDonald's sign are larger than that 3 square feet limit. I believe the Arches are about 14 square feet, and the McDonald's word is about 33 square feet on the order of. So we would be requesting a variance from the ordinances for those slightly larger signs to be placed on that side of the building.
So is there a total of 6 illuminated signs?
Correct.
You mentioned 2. You mentioned 2. I wrote down 2 not facing seeking variance on it.
Yes, it's these 3 signs, the McDonald's and the logo on that one side facing the Hannaford Drive, and then the logo facing the back of the property and the parking lot. Yes, and I can segue to that if I may. If we flip over to the other side, I tried to plan this out to be as simple as possible. It took me a while myself to get a hold of what is and is not a variance. In any case, now these are the 2 elevations that face the public right-of-way. Again, the illuminated McDonald's sign and 2 illuminated arches. Because we're facing the public right-of-way, we don't require a variance, but because they are illuminated, we do require a special permit. So it would be, the special permit would be for these 3 signs facing the public right-of-way, and then the other 3 signs that I already showed that would not be facing the public right-of-way. And all these signs are illuminated by LED, which have been designed consistent with current design practice with the intention of reducing glare as much as feasible. So that is the summary of what we are requesting tonight. Again, of course, we're only focusing on the wall signs, as the rest of the site we already addressed back in May. Our feeling is that this, again, is consistent with current design practice and is within the limits of the board's authority. And so we would request that you grant us our variance and special permit, and I'd open to any questions, please.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the presentation, and as you mentioned, McDonald's was here before, and maybe after review, they noticed that they, but then again, hey, maybe you don't need signs, right? Well, and it's good to hear that you're using LED, because certain members of this board are very strong proponents of LED. No, I can't believe how fast the building's gone up. They're making great strides, so I'm sure this will only enhance. Have they used this same type of design work anywhere else locally?
Yes, the McDonald's located right next to the Lowell connector, between the connector and 110. I forget the name of the cross street that it's on.
Yeah.
That is effectively the same design as this
Okay,
building,
yep.
and those signs are the same.
Yep, okay, yeah, they're on Plain Street, yeah. Okay, I don't have anything else. If you don't have anything at this point, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor, in favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition. Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Going to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions. I think the Development Services Office, the comments they provided, they don't have any concerns with the size of the signs and obviously the use for that area. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. You know, again, I think this is a pretty straightforward application. You know, a lot of detailed information. Thank you for going over this brief summary. You know, if it looks anything like the one you talked about on Plain Street, it's going to be a great product. So I think it's going to be a good project overall. So wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Van. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that you've submitted a very comprehensive package here, and it's really great to see something that's somewhat easily understandable. So it's because the building is perceived as not being on a right-of-way, fronting on a street or anything, that we're requiring the special permit on these illuminated signs that front the main access drive going up to Hannaford, but that's not called a public way. So that's part of the reason for that sign. Is that correct?
It's the variance is on the 2 sides of a building that are not facing a right-of-way.
But one of them is the main access drive to Hannaford, which
Right, which I believe does count as a right-of-way. So there's
Does
2
count.
that are facing the parking lot, basically, that aren't
the two
directly
that face
facing
the
a
parking
right-of-way.
lot. Great, okay, that makes more sense.
Those are the 2 sides that require a variance. It's a section of our zoning code requires
So
for
like-
wall signs, for any
All right,
sign that doesn't directly face a right-of-way or is within 45 degrees of it, it can't be larger than 3 square feet.
It's a challenging site, and I understand the need for the signage, and it makes a lot of sense to have signage on these other 2 sides for sure. So it makes, and I you know, I wasn't quite sure when I saw the original site plan that I would like the placement of the building so close to Roger Street, crowding it as much as it does, but I almost feel like it belongs because to me, it squeezes the traffic and hopefully slows the traffic down. It's one of those devices that might actually enhance the experience using Roger Street. So nice job and nice package that you presented here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
I have no comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments.
Okay. Well, and I think I already said what I think about it. Again, another nice job, nice finished product for this site. And so we have two motions here. We have a special permit and a variance. I'll leave it to you which one you want to do first.
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a special permit for illuminated signs not facing a right-of-way for ZB 2014-062 for 803 Rogers Street.
We have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved?
Mr. Palliot?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approved.
Mr. Perrin?
Approved.
Okay, special permit's been approved. Can I have a motion for the variance, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-62 for 803 Rogers Street for variance for illuminated signs, wall signs.
We have a second.
Second the motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved?
Mr. Palliot?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approved.
Mr. Perrin?
Approved.
Okay, sir, you've been approved for the variance. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Good luck.
Right. Okay, our next matter before us is ZB 2014-63. Petition is a special permit and variance. The applicant is Batten Brothers, Inc. Property is located at 585 Merrimack Street. And the petition, the applicant is seeking special permit and variance approval to install two new signs, one wall, one projecting onto an existing building that exceeds size requirements pursuant to section 6.31 and, 6.310 and 6.314 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Jeff Sarah with Batten Brothers Signs.
Okay.
We're the sign vendor for Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union. With me this evening is also Michelle Silvera, who is the Senior VP of Marketing for Jeanne d'Arc.
Okay.
I was just reprimanded for not having an easel with me, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
So first, I'd like to start out by saying the address on the application at 585 is incorrect. It's 581 Merrimack Street. So it was formerly 585. They changed the address when they built the building. So I just wanted to make sure that that was
You all set with that, Joe?
made note of, as that hopefully doesn't cause a problem. Doesn't change the zone.
Okay.
So in June, the credit union opened their new offices across the street from where their previous offices had been located. I think it was the site of the community health center, two buildings they tore down and built a new one. And after opening the building and having clients coming in and out, they realized that they had no visibility if you're headed west down Merrimack Street from the center. The west side of the east side of the building is also their entrance, and that forms in a counterclockwise direction, and it's a one-way exiting on the other side. So people have been driving right by, haven't seen it, don't know where to turn in. It's been somewhat problematic for them. So we're here before you tonight to seek a special permit and or variance, I'm not sure what the breakdown of that is, for a set of non-illuminated letters on the east side of the building, as well as a projecting sign that is larger than the 16 square feet allowed on the south elevation of the building.
Okay. And as far as exceeding the size, can you give us why it's exceeding or what the purpose is?
So this side of the building does not face, is not parallel to the street, so it's only allowed up to a 3 square foot wall sign. So we exceed beyond that, 3 square feet not being large enough to afford any visibility. And then on the projecting sign, the 16 square feet that's allowed along the same lines is problematic to have just the Shield logo at a max of, say, 4 foot by 4 foot and have it visible and serve its purpose.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at this point?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll open it up to the public, and now that we're down to the two of you and one speaking, is there anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the petitioner or representative. I'm just curious if you could explain again the need, and the development services in their comments mentioned that it seems like the 2 logo signs basically side by side, one on the side of the building and then one projecting seems redundant. And I don't know if the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union, the lettering could just be moved closer to the edge of the building and match with the projecting sign, or I guess if you could just, comment more on why they would need to be basically side by side, the same logo.
I understand the question perfectly and the concern for it. The Shield logo and the letters have always been treated as one unit and together. That's why they presented on the wall that way. The purpose of the projecting sign is sort of twofold, because as you head in the other direction, you go by the building and not knowing that the entrance is on the opposite side of the building, you've already passed it, so it's to help try to indicate that. There's also, on the visibility issue, as you're headed west, there's some foliage, or some trees, I believe they are, that obscure that area for most of the time. The credit union wouldn't be, I don't think would be objective to losing the Shield and readjusting the location and possibly the size slightly of the letters to accommodate the projecting sign, which they feel is more important. Michelle, if you'd like to speak to that, you're more than welcome.
Okay, I do agree with the purpose and the reason, because I've been in that area quite a bit since the building went up, and although I knew what was there, and but I can certainly see both westbound and eastbound on Merrimack Street people driving right by the site, and again, where the parking area is designed as a one-way to enter on the east side of the building and exit on the west side, whether you're using the ATMs or going into the building. But I'd like to hear what some other folks think about the duplicate Shield, but I don't have any other questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Pam?
I have no comments, Mr. Chairman.
Dennis?
Through Mr. Chairman, well, I do have a feeling that I think the duplicate Shield does seem a little out of place. The graphics are beautiful, the building is beautiful, the scale works very well, and I think that makes a lot of sense, but it's a little puzzling that you would have 2 logos that close together. And so I think that maybe just the one, and I agree that the projecting sign makes the most sense to keep. But beautiful signage.
Thank you.
So you'd be open to eliminating the one Shield that's mounted on the east elevation next to the signage, next to the letters?
They
Just
would,
sliding the letters over.
with keeping as long as they could have the projecting sign there. Along those lines, though, if we were to do that, I believe Michael had said to reposition, or somebody may have mentioned, to reposition the letters over to the left,
And-
or at least centered in that area. And We may want to increase the size of the lettering slightly, just so it doesn't look lost in that brick area with the elimination of the shield, if that's something that, you know, to get it to balance out.
Well, it's such a large building. I do think you do need to do something that's appropriate for the scale of the building. So I think that'd be in order to work with planning department to develop the correct lettering size for that portion of the brick panel. Yep.
Thank you. Could I add one more comment? In regards to the letters themselves, they're currently shown as black on the brick. In our discussions tonight, we had talked about potentially changing those to a white or a silver color for better contrast and visibility. The silver would match the silver of the building if that were the case, or white would be white. So.
I would definitely favor the silver myself, but do you have white logos using the white letters? Is that part of your branding?
I believe on a few occasions on dark backgrounds, we've used a white logo, but silver would, if the sign, actually the projecting sign is going to be silver, so the letters could be silver
Would make
too.
sense, right.
The tie-in is the same color, it'd look nice.
Great. Nice job. No further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union has been a treasured institution well over 100 years, maintaining their downtown historical value and placing this building at the site has increased that neighborhood dearly. I mean, I fully understand the marketing value with the double shield. I don't have an issue with it. The protruding sign does act as a dual entrance, an indication to that entrance sign. As far as the lettering, I think you would have to do an increase there, just as a purpose to scale. And I think, obviously tonight, the petitioner has had some internal compromise prior to having a discussion with the board, which is no surprise that would take place. I'd be concerned about moving away from the marketing piece of white lettering and stay in the scheme of the silver, and I think that is something that you're looking to do. So, I think it's a wonderful piece and a very added value to the site as well. I wish you the best of luck over there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share those same sentiments with my fellow board members as well. My concern was the two shield being a bit redundant next to each other. My suggestion would have even been, I don't know if it's possible, even moving the projecting sign inward or maybe to the center of the building, which it could be seen from both sides, coming both east and west on East Merrimack Street. But I guess one of the questions I did have, and I haven't really been by the building since it's been built in the nighttime. Is there any plans on illumination of the signs at all from the ground, or
None of the signs are illuminated, it's ambient light only.
Okay, so is it just like spotlight signs that are projecting at the building at all? or is
Not
it-
even.
No.
Not even, there's no you didn't add lights, right? There's no illumination to the signage.
Okay. All right. Well, those are my only questions and concerns, so I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Sean, I stole one of yours, so you just stole one of mine, so I was going to ask about illumination also, so thank you for answering that. So it sounds like we're talking about, based on the petition, you're going to remove the shield from the building, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the sign that's projecting, we're going to go with the size that's being proposed, correct?
No change, correct.
And as I guess I will say this, as a customer, and I can only say I've been to the facility once, I did drive by. I drove by it, and when I realized I couldn't go in on the other end, I was lucky enough to get a parking spot in front. And then I noticed it was, the circular motion, so I guess I can attest to being a customer, and I guess I'll support, the purpose of putting the sign up there.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So, Joe, the only other The thing Dennis and I were discussing, so we were here for a special permit and a variance. If we're going to remove the logo from the building, are we just talking the special permit or the variance?
Just talking the variances at this point for the oversized projecting sign, and then the lettering is oversized because, again, similar with the other petition,
Yep.
it's not technically facing a street, so it's oversized.
Okay, so I also believe, all right, so thank you for answering that. So we're entertaining a variance, and I believe, Dennis, you had two conditions. If you want to just let this gentleman know before we move forward.
So the two conditions are to provide only the single shield associated with the projected sign. And the second condition would be to work with DPD to reposition the letters and rescale the letters to be appropriate for the brick panel.
Exactly, very clear. And that can be done on a staff level without coming back before the board.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, conditions? Hearing none, could I have a motion, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-63 for a variance for oversized signage at 581 Merrimack Street with the following two conditions. The proposed signage will have only one shield, and that would be at the mounted projected sign off the building. And the second condition is to work with DPD to center the lettering in the brick panel and adjust the scale of the size of the letters.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Palia?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Peck?
Approve with conditions?
Mr. Perry?
Approved with conditions.
Okay, sir, you've been approved with
Thank you,
conditions. Wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Nice evening.
Thank you. Okay, since we have no other business, next meeting, December 8th, Joe, does that sound right?
December 9th, I believe, or it could be 8th, Mr.
I
Chairman.
have 8th on here.
Okay.
Okay. And then that'll be our last meeting for the year, correct?
That's correct.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks. You're a really great guy. Give us the rest of the month off. Thank you. All right, anything else from any other board members? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
So moved. Right.